Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the all-new 2023 Chevy C8 Corvette Z06. In the first part of the video we're going to go over the specs for the new Z06, and then we're going to get into my thoughts on this new version of the Corvette. And with all that being said, let's just get right into the video. I know there's already a million videos out there on the new Z06 because everyone's super hyped about it. So this video will be pretty short. This will be like the quick and dirty information if you somehow haven't heard about the car already. So the Z06 is going to be new for the 2023 model year. They're most likely going to start production middle of 2022, and they'll be selling it as a 2023. And so expect the first deliveries to happen late 2022, early 2023 if everything goes to plan, which it never really does. Now, the big news about this Z06 is the fact that it is going to use a naturally aspirated flat plane crank 5.5 liter V8 that goes through an 8-speed dual clutch automatic, just like the regular C8, and power outputs are crazy: 670 horsepower, 460 pound-feet of torque, with the red line at 8,600 RPMs, and peak horsepower is at 8,400 RPMs, so you're really going to have to rev out the car to really feel all of the power, which is awesome because that is just like the Ferrari 458, and that's what they have benchmarked to basically compete, or basically compare this Z06 against. What Chevy did is they bought a 458 and they drove it around, and then they bought a Ferrari 488, which is the one that comes after the 458, and the difference between them is the 458 has a naturally aspirated flat plane crank V8, whereas the 488 went for a turbocharged V8, and you lost quite a bit when you went to the 488. Yes, it was quicker. Yes, it had better performance, but it didn't have the sound and the experience that the 458 had. So Chevy took note and they said, okay, we got to do this. We got to stick with the naturally aspirated V8. We got to do the flat plane crank. And so now we're getting it. And yeah, the power outputs are just crazy to me because, I mean, if you look at the 458s, the highest version of it, right, the Speciale, had like right around 600 horsepower. And this has literally almost 700 horsepower, and it's crazy to think that they've been able to squeeze out that much power. And you guys hearing the torque figure are probably like, wait, it has less torque than the regular C8. And that's what happens when you do flat plane crank V8s, is they've got really big horsepower numbers, but the torque is definitely going to be more on the conservative side. I had a Shelby GT350, and it was the same thing. It had over 500 horsepower, and then it had 429 pound-feet of torque, which, you know, was right around the same amount as what you got the GT Mustang with less horsepower, right? But that's just how the engines are. They don't necessarily feel super punchy off the line, but again, power just builds and builds and builds all the way up to red line, and so it just has its own special experience. Anyways, moving from that, let's quickly get into the rest of the stuff. So interior-wise, the Z06 is going to be pretty much the same as the regular C8. So you're going to be able to do all the different interior packages. You're going to get it less loaded if you want, or you can get it more loaded. That stuff is really not going to change. You're still going to be able to put carbon fiber to the interior. Still going to have the digital gauge cluster and the digital info, or the touchscreen infotainment system. And so yeah, interior stuff going to stay all the same, so we're not going to focus on that too much. Exterior-wise, they are making some stylistic changes, but it's not like it looks too crazy. It's a little bit wider than this regular C8, and you can get an optional Z07 package, which adds a bunch of carbon fiber ground effects and a carbon fiber spoiler and all that fun stuff, and it adds larger brakes and larger wheels as well for better performance, and then wider tires, kind of what they had on the previous generation Z07 package. But without a Z07 package, it just looks kind of like a little bit of a beefier C8. It's still a very good looking car, but it doesn't change all that much. I guess the biggest change is to the exhaust tips, because now they're center mounted like they were prior. Obviously with the regular C8, they're on either side, whereas with the C7, they're in the center, which is kind of like a Corvette thing. But now back to the Z06, they've put them back in the center. They listen to people, and it does look a whole lot better, and it really kind of feels more like a Corvette because of that. But yeah, again, the big headline is the engine. Everything else, again, well, not everything else, but a lot of stuff is staying the same, and that's kind of what Chevy does with the Corvette, right? Is you have the base model, and then what they do is they just add crazier and crazier powertrains, bigger brakes, bigger tires, bigger wheels, to be able to, you know, stop that extra power, and also be able to get a little bit of extra grip with that extra power. And so yeah, they're still staying true to the normal Corvette formula, and I'm glad they did things this this way. I am so glad that they did not do a supercharged V8 because I think that would have been a mistake for the character. My biggest complaint about the C8 was the fact that it just felt so weird with the engine. Like, it was this super exotic looking car, an exotic driving car, and then the engine just didn't make sense. But let's get into my thoughts now. Now, I kind of already put quite a bit of opinion in the last section, so I guess the section's not going to be as long. And first off, I am extremely excited for this car. I think that this is going to be a future classic. Like, it's already going to come out, and you know, I'm sure that there are going to be people asking stupid amounts of money for it because availability is going to be an issue, and we'll actually get into that a little bit later in this video. But yes, I am extremely excited for the new Z06. I think that Chevy just absolutely knocked it out of the park doing a flat plane crank V8 that's naturally aspirated. That is the route to go. It's just going to make the performance of the car that much more exciting. It's going to be all about the driving experience. And again, it fixes all of my complaints with the regular C8, because the regular C8, in my opinion, is a great daily driver. It's very just comfortable overall with the seats and with the whole layout of the car, and the acceleration is really good, and the transmission is amazing. It's just super quick and snappy, but the engine just doesn't have the right sound and doesn't have the right feel, because when you get in that car and you just get that instant torque punch from the pushrod V8, it just feels like you're driving this weird mid-engine muscle car, which I guess that's kind of what the Corvette is, but it just doesn't feel right. It really doesn't feel right. And so the fact that they're doing this I'm sure is just gonna have the right feel to it, where it feels like what the car looks like and what the car drives like from a handling perspective. And so yeah, I'm really excited for it. And also the fact that they've spent a ton of time in developing the noise cancellation with the car, with the vibration from the engine, because flat plane crank V8s do a ton of vibration. So they've spent a ton of time into engineering a lot of the vibration to the cabin out. So it's still going to be a really nice, luxurious experience. You're still going to get the nice sound quality, but you're not going to have to deal with the normal issues you have to deal with when you are driving a car that has a flat plane crank V8. Again, think Shelby GT350, think Ferrari 458. The Ferrari 458 definitely more so. Like, that car, you really feel the engine, but again, that's also kind of part of the experience. So I guess it's kind of like a catch-22 that they fix all the vibration, because you are kind of pulling a little bit out from the experience with that. And now I guess we'll get into my hang-ups with, well, before we get into the hang-ups, I guess we'll get into what this car, I guess, means for like the supercar world. The C8 already changed things quite a bit. You had a lot of people that normally purchase supercars that were then going and purchasing the C8, and that's why they sold out so quickly. The Z06 is only going to reinforce that, because right now, if you want to get a car that's similar to it, again, Ferrari 458, you're going to have to spend like over $200,000 now. Whereas this car is probably going to start at about $85,000 to $90,000. And then for a fully loaded one with the Z07 package, it's probably going to be about $120,000, $130,000 roughly, which is $70,000 less than a 458, and we're talking about a used 458. So we're not talking about a brand new car. This is going to be a brand new car with a full warranty on it from the factory, whereas if you go and buy a used 458, I mean, some of them you might still have a little bit of warranty on it, but most of them you're completely out of luck. So if things break on it, you're going to have to deal with it. So that's kind of another thing that's going for the Corvette. And yeah, I think that it's going to pull even more people from buying supercars, because they're going to be like, okay, yeah, I don't get the same status necessarily that I get with a Lamborghini or a Ferrari, but I'm getting the driving experience, and I'm getting a car that's very comfortable, and it's a lot more reasonably priced, so I can spend more money in modifications or just spend more money on other stuff, right? Now, the only holdup with this is availability is going to be really rough. So right now, we're still dealing with supply issues with parts because of COVID. So yeah, availability is going to be an issue because of that. But on top of that, it sounds like they're trying to like make this a really special car from an availability perspective. Like, they don't want there to be that many of them out there. I've talked to a few Chevy dealers, and it sounds like they're not going to get a massive amount of allocations, and they've got lists that are far longer than the amount of allocations they get. For example, one Chevy dealer, they've got a list that is literally up to 200 plus people, and they might get 5 allocations for the new Z06 in the first year. So that kind of gives you an idea of what's happening. And so if you're not already on a list, you're probably not going to get a car unless you want to pay a huge premium over MSRP. And that's another downside, is this car, just like all the other new cars getting released that are special, is going to go for massive amounts over MSRP. And so yeah, I guess that's another downside. So unless you're able to find the right dealer and all that, it's going to be a car you have to pay a lot of money for. I've heard some dealers that are doing a reasonable $25,000 over MSRP already. That's what I've been hearing. It's pretty crazy stuff. But overall, really exciting car. And, you know, as it is from Chevy, I think it's an amazing deal, and I think it's so much value for the money, and I think this is going to be one of the cars that is going to be like the car of the decade. But again, availability is going to be an issue, pricing is going to be an issue because of availability, and so I guess that's the only sad thing is a lot of enthusiasts are going to be priced out of the market for this car because of availability. And the video is getting too long, so we're going to cap things off. If you're stopping me for the first time, please subscribe. I'll see you guys.